presentation on the sewer rate study results. Whenever you're ready.
Ed, how are you?
Or Faison.
Good.
However you want to go. The floor is yours.
All right. Good, sir? No, you're fine. Good evening. My name is Basil Ronzetti. I'm the Chief of the Bureau of Sewers. We're taking the time to attend this study session. Tonight's discussion will focus on the wastewater treatment plant facility's operational costs and future capital improvement needs. Last November, the City of Erie contracted with Raftellus to prepare a comprehensive analysis of our wastewater rates and provide guidance on future rate structures. Raftellus assists local governments and utilities in an effort to improve their financial foundation while maintaining and minimizing the impact on the people that rely on their services. With us tonight are Phil Sapone and Rocky Crowley from Raftellus. Phil and Rocky will present the results of their study and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the intro, Basil. So I'm going to go through some slides tonight, and I think you can stop me and ask questions as I'm going through it, or you can wait until the end. Either one is fine. So, but anyway, yeah. To Basil's point here in the introduction, we've been working with the city for a good portion of the year, and basically the background was the city reached out to us and said, "Look, we have a lot of projects planned at the treatment plant. Can you help us, build a financial forecast so we can prepare about a 5-year forecast, and then help us make some decisions about how much capital project work could be done at the plant, and then the rate impact, the timing of different projects, how those projects are paid for, and then look at the rate impact." So basically a decision-making support tool. And that's what we've been working with the city on for a good portion of this year. So that's the background. Again, $41 million in capital investments planned at the wastewater treatment plant over the next 5 years. Raftellus is involved to build a financial forecasting model to help make some decisions about those projects and how to pay for them. So just some background information here, talking about the city's sewer rates. So these are the sewer rates that are assessed to city customers. So when we talk about rate revenues and rate increases, we're talking about these rates here. So it's a city service charge that's per bill. That's a fixed charge. And then you have a 3-tier declining block rate structure. So kind of a mouthful, but there's just 3 different volumetric rates. And if your usage falls within 0 to 70 CCF, you're assessed one rate. If your usage is above 70 CCF but below 5,000, you're assessed a different rate on the usage between there, and then over 5,000, you're assessed a third different type of rate. So you can see the existing rates for 2024 to the far right, and then the historical rates in prior years. So just some information on sewer rates and what we're talking about when we talk about sewer rates, city sewer rates, and sewer rate revenues. So we'll get into the rate and financial forecast. And before we built the financial model and did our projections, what we wanted to do was kind of assess the existing financial conditions. So what that means is we came in and we looked at sewer revenues related to sewer expenses. That's the first thing we did. So we wanted to know, where are you starting from? Are revenues sufficient to meet expenses currently? Are revenues less than expenses? Are revenues more than expenses? So we wanted to know where we're starting from. And so that's what the chart here is showing, is that revenues, which is the bar on the left, are $27.6 million for this related to the sewer system. And a portion of that, $16.9 million, that's the revenue you get from sewer rates, from the rates I showed in the previous slide. And then $8.2 million in 2024. That was from revenues paid in from tributary communities or municipal customers that send wastewater to the city. And then about $2.5 million is just some miscellaneous revenue sources. And then the breakdown for expenses are operating expenses, so it's a big part of the budget. And then debt service. And the debt service is the debt service on debt that's been issued and held by Erie Sewer Authority, but the city transfers revenues generated from rates to pay that debt service. So anyway, it's a good picture. Revenues equal expenses. We also wanted to make sure that, as part of this, the existing rates generate enough revenues to repay debt service, which they do, which that's what's being shown here. We assessed the existing cash position, so we want to know how much cash is in the bank. And you can see here, beginning 2024, there's about 2.5 months worth of cash in the bank. So we wanted to just see if you were, spending it right down to zero, or, where you were on cash. So we thought that was a pretty good spot. And the last part here is just pay-go spending. What that's saying is we want to know if the rates generate any cash that the city can use to pay for capital projects. And right now, the budget doesn't have that. So we're just noting that there. So now we're into building the financial forecast, and just a quick note about that. It's a Microsoft Excel-based tool, so we build it in Excel. It's a spreadsheet, and we customize it for whatever utility that we're working with. So we customize it for the city. And when we make our projections, I'm just highlighting a few, like I said, key inputs and assumptions here. So when we project out operating expenses, which is a big portion of the budget, what we did was we took the 2024 budgeted operating expenses, because that's the best information we had at the time when we were preparing the forecast, and we just escalated those in future years based on the expense type. So salaries and wages went up a certain amount based on discussions we had with the city, benefit costs went up by a different amount, and so on and so forth. So we went line item by line item to make those projections. And overall, we're seeing expenses being projected to increase by 4% per year over this 5-year forecast period. It's pretty typical with what we see at other utilities as well. We also factored in future revenues from the tributary communities. We analyzed the existing agreements and specifically the cost sharing and pricing provisions in those agreements, so that we factored in revenues from tributary communities in future years as well. And we made sure we understood what debt is outstanding and the repayment schedule on that debt. So we factored in repayment of existing debt as well. That's that last bullet point. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we also incorporated capital investments of $41.1 million. And then the breakdown of payments on that was a portion was paid for by the Erie Sewer Authority's Bond Redemption and Improvement Fund, and then a portion would be paid by a new revenue bond. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail in other slides, but that's just showing our assumptions on the capital project funding piece. No new additional debt issues were included in the forecast, and we didn't include any provision for rate-funded capital spending or cash-funded capital spending by the city on any infrastructure that the city owns. In addition to making sure, as part of the forecast, making sure that revenues are sufficient to pay for costs, that's definitely a part of the forecast, we do want to look at some fiscal policies. So the reason we look at fiscal policies is the city has a lease agreement with the Erie Sewer Authority, so we want to make sure that the rates are set in adherence to any relevant provisions in the lease agreement, and also just to make sure that the system is kept in a good financial position. So the first fiscal policy we incorporate is operating cash reserves, so it's cash in the bank. There's a lot of good reasons to have adequate cash reserves. And we talked to city staff who said, yes, they have a reserve target. So the informal policy is to have at least 2 months worth of budgeted O&M costs held as cash. So basically, cash is sufficient to pay for 2 months of annual O&M costs. So we incorporated that into the forecast. The lease does require minimum cash reserve balance as well. So we factored that in. Debt service coverage, that just means the money that is repaid on outstanding debt at the Erie Sewer Authority. Want to make sure revenues cover that, plus a 10% margin that also has to be transferred to the Erie Sewer Authority to be deposited into the Bond Redemption and Improvement Fund. Want to make sure revenues are sufficient to pay for that as well. And then the last piece is just capital project funding. We took direction on the capital project funding piece from the Erie Sewer Authority. But in general, what they are looking to do is smaller dollar value items, pay for it with cash out of the Bond Redemption and Improvement Fund. Larger dollar value items, finance those over some longer period, 20, 25 years. So this is a breakdown by category of the $41 million in future capital investments. A couple notes about this. The first is that these are all treatment plant related projects. You can, if you read down the left side, you have the categories here. So this is all work at the plant. This is also all repair and replacement work. There's no, there's nothing growth related. We're not expanding capacity at the plant. This is just repairing and replacing existing infrastructure at the plant. And then the other piece I'd like to mention is that, when we built this forecast, we started with inputs of $60 million in capital expenditures. And we evaluated the right impact of that. And we said, all right, that might be too much. Let's see if we can cut that down based on prioritizing certain projects and deferring other capital projects. So not eliminating, but deferring. So prioritizing and then deferring to get it down to 41 million. And then let's look at the rate impact of that. So this was a balance between getting the work done that needs to be done, but also being mindful of the rate impact to customers. And that's why we built the financial model. That's why we ran those scenarios to help us make those decisions. Oops. And we talked about this. So we have a capital plan. It's 41 million. We received word from the Erie Sewer Authority that they plan to pay for this, pay for the breakdown of the 41 million was going to be paid as follows. So 6.6 million in the bond redemption and improvement fund. Those are monies that are on hand. That does not represent additional funds that need to be raised in the future from rate revenues.
Sorry, may I ask a question?
Oh yeah, sure.
Basil, I'm just looking at the previous slide, this sludge incinerator. We just bought an incinerator 2 years ago. Is that a different incinerator?
No, we didn't buy them. We're making improvements to
Okay.
sewage site incinerators.
Okay. All right, that's all. You and I.
have
The $700,000 expenses I usually remember.
750.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anyway, the breakdown of the funding is $6 million from the bond redemption improvements fund, and then a new revenue bond that would be issued by the Erie Sewer Authority for about $34.5 million. So we're going to share summary level results for our projections, but before we show the projections, we're going to talk about projected rate increases. And the question that always comes up is, well, you're showing rate increases, what's driving those? What's making, what's creating the need for raising the sewer rates? So we're just showing that here to be as transparent as possible. So it's two factors. Operating expenses, which we talked about, our projections assume that they would go up by 4% per year by analyzing all the different expense line items and estimating how much each would increase each year. So 4% per year over 5 years, that's about 20% over a 5-year period. And then the second piece is the additional debt service, or the additional repayment of new debt. So we have the bond issue in 2026 for 35 million. Got to repay that with interest, so that's extra cost. That's also what's making, that's also what's creating the need for, to increase the sewer rates in the future. So just making sure we're transparent about any of the rate increases that we're showing. So these are a couple forecast scenarios, and let me explain what I'm showing here. So if you look at the chart that has colors, what we're doing is we're forecasting expenses. We're forecasting the expenses of the system, and we're comparing it to revenues. So the green area is operating expenses. We talked about that before. It's a significant portion of the sewer budget. Those are projected to go up over time, so it slants upward. The yellow is the repayment of principal and interest on existing debt. We know what that is. It's been issued and it's held by the Erie Sewer Authority, so we can project those costs in the future. They're fairly level year to year. So that yellow line is, or that yellow area is pretty consistently, it doesn't increase over the forecast period. So the red part, that's the new debt service. That's the bond issue in 2026. That's the extra cost. The dotted line, that's where revenues are now. So if we didn't change revenues over the next 5 years, but we projected expenses to increase, assuming the 41 million in capital work at the plant and the new bond issue, you can see revenues wouldn't be sufficient to cover expenses. And I've got two charts over on the side. The first one is showing cash. That goes down. It becomes negative in year 3, or 2027. And then we have I call it debt service coverage. It's just the ability to repay money that you've borrowed and then transfer that 10% margin to the authority. And when those bars go below the line, that means rates aren't sufficient to cover all that. So in any case, we're not recommending this. It's just informational. It's saying, how does this look if we project out the costs and don't do anything with revenues? So this is just an informational slide here. So this next scenario, again, same setup. So we have the projected costs in the slide with the colors here. And then we have our two charts on cash, one on cash reserves, the other on ability to repay debt. And we said, maybe there's a single percentage increase that we could factor in over the next 5 years that would be moderate and predictable year to year. And the good thing about it being predictable is it gives customers the sense that they kind of know what their sewer rates are going to be from year to year. Yeah, it goes up about X% per year. So that's what we're trying to do. That's helpful to all customers, particularly customers who might be on a tighter budget. So that's what we're trying to do, but that's hard when we're trying to lump in a bond issue in 2026 for 35 million at 4, almost 5% interest. So we tried to do that, but you can see we're okay on cash. If you look at the chart on the right, we're okay on cash in that top right chart, but we can't quite generate enough revenue from rates at this single percentage rate increase to repay and transfer, repay the debt that has to be repaid and then transfer that margin to the Erie Sewer Authority. And that would put us out of compliance with the lease. So we didn't want to recommend this scenario, but we did want to show it. And then the last scenario here is our recommended 5-year rate plan. So again, it's the same setup. And what we're trying to do in those first 2 years is keep the recommended or the projected rate increase below double digits. So we know we have a lot of extra costs coming in 2026 from the bond issue. So we're trying to keep the rate increases moderate over this 2-year period in anticipation of that. And you can see once we get over that hump in 2026, we're looking at 3 to 4% increases thereafter. And that works on cash, and then that allows us to repay the debt and transfer the margin per the lease agreement to the authority. So these are projected rates. So we show these at the beginning, the existing sewer rates for city customers, the service charge, the volumetric rates. We have existing rates in 2024. So we're just showing what those future rates would be. So when we talk about a 7% increase here based on our projections and based on our assessment, again, just a reminder, that's rate revenue, so that's the revenue you get from these rates. And if you were to say, well, how are you going to get 7% more revenue from these rates? Well, we would increase each one by 7%. So we'd increase each rate component by 7%. That's how we get 7% more rate revenue. This slide here is just showing projected monthly residential sewer bills. So we have rate increases. We're just trying to translate that into bill impacts. What does it look like to the customer on their bill? So we've got 3 example customers. We've got a lower use customer, we've got a moderate use customer, and then maybe a little bit higher use customer. We analyze customer data to figure out who's at the 25th percentile, who's at the 50th, and who's at the 75th. That's how we come up with those numbers. So those are the monthly bills. I know that customers are billed quarterly, but sometimes it's easier to look at these bills monthly because we all get our bills on a monthly basis. So you can see on the bottom table, maybe that's a little bit more interesting, you can see how much these different customer bills are going up per month based on the recommended 5-year rate plan. So
I have one more question.
Sure.
When we were originally proposed the budget, we were told a 9% increase in sewer, and this suggests a 7% increase in sewer. Does anyone want to clarify that difference for me?
This is based on 2024 budget.
I'm sorry.
Based on 24 budget. Calculations were based on the 2024 budget. So it didn't take into account increasing costs. We said it's slightly over.
I'm sorry, what?
Renee, would you like to come up and explain from the mic so everyone can hear you?
What isn't everything? Sorry, and I know that's not on you guys, but we just got a proposal. We're voting on it next month, and 2%. Sometimes I'm not saying this actually happens here, but you know, like sometimes there's negotiation and maybe we were given 9 and we're very quickly wrangling it into, no? No? Okay, all right.
No, we use the same rates in the budget as they used in the study, but the flow numbers change, and it just resulted in a little bit higher increase this year than projected from the budget numbers from last year.
But they understand flow rates. Okay.
They
Just-
used the budget numbers from last year, and I used new numbers this year.
Okay,
So
okay,
there's just a little bit, there's
okay.
a little bit of difference.
It's our understanding, though, that the rates that we are indeed showing here are the ones that are used in the ordinance, is that correct? Okay,
Correct.
great.
And those per house numbers are an estimate based on averages. And I've taken the average of low to high everybody, and they're looking at median numbers
Right, so
at
is-
each flow rate.
So this is a difference of median versus mean?
What you see in your booklet is based on mean, and what we're showing here is based on median, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, the percentage per CCF is 7%.
okay.
But once the numbers are crunched, the estimated amount per household looks like 9%.
And they'll pay it monthly or quarterly? Quarterly.
Quarterly like they do now.
All right, just trying to understand the disparity on that. Thanks.
Sorry for the interruption.
All right. So this slide here, we wanted to just provide some supporting information based on our, based on the results of our projections. So the question we get is, a lot of times is, are our rates higher or lower than everybody else's? So in anticipation of that question, we wanted to do our best to answer it. And it's hard to compare sewer rates from utility to utility because everybody's rate structure is different. So we can't just put them next to each other and say, oh, those look
Apples to
higher.
oranges, well, as people
Yeah,
do.
exactly. So how can we normalize that to make a comparison? Well, we calculate a monthly bill. So we say, you can structure your rates however you want, but let's calculate a monthly bill and compare those monthly bills, and then that could be an indication of, are your rates higher or lower than others, okay? So that's what we did. We calculated a monthly bill, and we selected sewer utilities that are generally in the region, approximately the same size, or much larger in the region, but very recognizable and known, okay? So that's what we try to do here. Now, Rocky and I can look at the sewer rates, and we can tell that they're probably low because we look at sewer rates all the time. So when the city ends up on the left side of this chart, we're not surprised. That's where we thought you'd end up, okay? So that's just some information to share. If you were on the other side of the chart, you're on the right side, your question would probably then be, why does it cost us more to provide sewer service than everybody else? And what I try to do is just lay out some reasons why sometimes it can vary. So treatment process and technologies vary. Sometimes it costs more to operate a treatment plant from one plant to the other. Service area density, what kind of infrastructure you have in your systems. If you have pump stations, that's electricity and that's additional infrastructure to maintain. And the big one is the level of system reinvestment. So a lot of systems in the Northeast are old, and utilities are starting to replace that old infrastructure, and some are further ahead and others are behind. So if you're behind, your rates may be lower, but you're probably going to get to where everybody else is over time. So just providing some information here that we thought might be helpful for y'all. Just some additional information about cost increases. So we talked about rate increases and how much a bill is going to go up. Putting that into context with two things. So there's two lines here. The first line is CPI. We're all familiar with that over the last couple of years because costs have increased a lot. It comes out monthly. It's not in the news so much anymore, but it used to be. But that's the light blue line. So CPI is Consumer Price Index. It's a basket of goods and services in the U.S. economy and how much that's going up year to year. So over the last 10 years, CPI index has gone up 31.8%. So if you divide that by 10, that's about 3%. So you can say, on average, goods and services are going up by about 3% per year. So that's some good information. Now there's a portion of that index called the water sewer maintenance category, And we look at that very closely because that's the cost of water and sewer service for the average person in the United States. So it's a component, it's part of the basket of goods and services. That's gone up 52.7%, so a little bit over 5% per year. So if you were to ask us, how much are sewer rates going up per year on average everywhere else? That indicates that it's going up about 5% per year, just over 5% per year, and that's pretty consistent with what we see with the, from other industry data that we look at. So again, just putting some things in context. The last part here is, we'll often get a question that says, are our rates affordable? That's a hard question to answer. There's a lot of dimensions to affordability, and what we try to do here was pick one metric, one simple metric that we think is easiest to explain and makes sense, and it's just comparing the annual sewer bill to annual income. So the comparison of annual sewer bill to annual income. Now, incomes range throughout the city, throughout the service area here. So it's hard to just pick one income. So what we did is we stratified it. We put it into quintiles, just means put it into fifths. And I just picked a few years. So you can see if I pick the lowest quintile, that's the bar on the far left. That's the average income in the bottom 20% of household incomes. So the annual sewer bill is 3.2% of the average income in that bottom 20%. In the highest 20%, or the incomes that are at the top 20%, the annual sewer bill is 0.2% of their income. So it's quite a range here, reflects the range of incomes in the service area. And we're providing this because we thought it might be helpful for y'all to see. It's part of our presentation today. That's it. If anybody has any questions, we can do our best to answer them.
Does anyone on council have questions for?
Remind me again what the different percentages were for, on these slides.
The different
The
percent.
projected sewer rates recommended, you had said like this was this percent, this is maybe this percent.
Yeah,
an
so
increase.
I think I know what you're saying. So you're saying, what are the percentages that apply to those?
These charts here.
Yeah, it's the rates, it's the percentage increases from this chart here.
Okay.
So it's a 7% in 2025, 9.25%, and so on.
And you can also see that just by calculating the percent differences between the rates, the rate adjustments were applied across the board to all of your current rates, and therefore each one kind of shows in 2025 a 7% adjustment from the existing 2024.
And just to make sure I was following everything that was happening there, what we're actually gonna, like, what is actually being requested in the budget though is not 7%, it's a 9%?
What's being requested in the budget are these rates, and my calculation, based on the data that I put into the system, came up with a different average rate for, per household, but that was just an estimate at the bottom of the 5-year plan.
Okay.
So these are the rates that are on the ordinance.
And the 2025 rate is a 7% adjustment to the 2024 rate. So the customer will see a 7% increase. If that makes sense.
If we didn't do it, how would we get the money? General fund?
General fund doesn't have that kind of money.
$7. What are we talking about per year? What does it increase in dollars amount to?
$2 million.
I don't have that off the top of my head. I might be able to go back here.
Just,
We can.
Based on the percentages that are laid out in here, it's about $2 up to $4 a quarter, depending on where you fall per person, like per.
I'm not saying that, I'm saying how much
Can I see the
impact would it
budget?
have on the budget? Everyone.
Your
Oh, I see what
budget.
you're saying.
With no increase, are you saying?
The increase
How
is to
much
be
the
able.
increase will bring in is what I'm asking. Nobody seems to know that.
No, we can figure it out.
We can take the revenue from 24 to the revenue from 25, and that's the difference. It's just under 2 million.
I guess what I'm saying is, if we need X amount of bucks to run this the right way, then make it a tax increase. because you keep on hitting the poorest people with these fee increases. And I'm speaking from the viewpoint of the poorest people, people on a fixed income. And they just keep on getting hit again and again and again. And I don't want to be a negative Nelly here. I'm just asking, is there another way that we can do it? That's all.
The thing about the sewer increases, everybody pays.
Yeah.
The nonprofits, you know, the people that are exempt from tax increases.
Right.
So it's fair and equitable across the board. It just doesn't put the burden on the taxpayer.
And it's usage based.
All users pay their fair share.
And you never got the time to find out how many people on fixed income that could be exempted?
No, I haven't had time to pull that data. That's
I
going
had
to be.
asked at a previous meeting a couple weeks ago to see what impact on the budget would be if the folks, single-family owners, or even, you know, a two-family unit with a family in it on a fixed income, if we didn't charge them the fee increase, how much of a difference would it be? And I advocated for a higher rate than what we're asking for. Let the people who are working and playing pay the way. I think the folks that built our city are tired. That's, you know, and again, I'm all by myself, old man on the hill here, but
By yourself on that one.
I feel very strongly about that part of it. We have a huge, huge population of very poor people, people who have lost pensions that they thought they'd have forever when the companies disappeared. Just one item, you know, guys that, and women that just worked different places and never had the opportunity to build up a pension. So they're living on Social Security and maybe working at Country Fair or something to bring a couple extra bucks. And we hit them up already. The older folks put one little bag of garbage out and they're getting hit with the same sting as even my wife and I, we always have 2 or 3 cans out there. He separates this and separates that.
So I just did the math, and I used your address and my address for comparison. So if we paid for this deficit through taxes, instead of having a $31 increase to your sewer, you would have a $135 increase to your taxes. And for me, it's a little bit less than that.
You're talking a nonprofit?
No, I'm talking, no, because the nonprofits, they pay into sewer. The nonprofits pay for sewer.
Yeah.
They don't pay for taxes.
They don't pay for taxes. So if we take it from the general fund, it'll cost you and I it'll cost you an extra $100. It'll cost me an extra $70 instead of taking it from sewer. $134.28 for you.
It helps the poor people, they'll pay it. It's the bottom line.
But if they have a house, they're not gonna
Right, right, on their property tax. I think that the reason that the fees were something that people continuously try to go to is that 30% of nonprofits that aren't paying their taxes are required to pay their usage and then also required to pay something. If we do it as a tax increase, those 30% who already don't pay their fair share are gonna get to save on their property tax increase, while the homeowners and property owners are gonna get an increase. Whereas if we were to do the fee, it would be everyone, and it also helps support the foundation and infrastructure needs that are required by state and federal laws to be up to par, to be able to have the balance in their budget to do these type of projects. The fact that we were able to compare what we're charging to other areas, we're really low, and I know that we have intentionally done that for the last however many years, but it's gonna come time that we're gonna have to pay, and who's gonna pay is what the question is. And I don't think that the investment that past generations have done for our city should be allowed to be forgotten and left to just deteriorate. I think that when we have 30% of our property base tax exempt, we have to make sure that people are paying the new increases so that our city can actually move forward. And the only way that's gonna happen is if we're making sure everybody's paying. I mean, I don't want the seniors who've been in their homes to lose anything due to increases, but I also want us to be very aware that 30% of our property is tax exempt. So any increases to taxes is not going to affect them any.
May I make a statement?
Go ahead.
The nonprofit people are good people. Have we reached out to them and asked them how much they would help us with? Probably not. You know, historically, I'm an old enough guy to remember that. Historically, city was Big Mama. We had all the money in the world. We gave it here, we gave it there, and we smiled because the money was coming in. You know, we had all kinds of, the Cyrus Erie, Open Stove, West 12th Street, all those places were there. They're not there anymore. So the folks that we helped get started, it just makes sense that we go back to them. It'll decrease their workload, because if we help the poorest of the poor, the nonprofits don't have to go out there and help those people, which is what we're looking at in the long run with the thing. So again, I don't mean to puncture balloons here, but there's a reality factor here. There's a lot of poor people here. Titus, can you help me?
Yeah. So here's where I'm also getting, like, coming back to one of the comments that Chuck had made, and continues to roll around in my mind. So this is, I think, we clearly have to figure out results here, right? We have to figure out something, and also the ARP money is going to run out. Mm-hmm. We can't fee our way out of that. We're about to be how many more positions that we no longer have money for, and that's where I'm getting really nervous. Is, okay, so we add the fees, we're going to add these fees, but we've not shifted in how many more pensions and other things that we're paying into with these other positions that we've added with ARP that is going to add millions in a deficit very soon. Very soon. And so I think this is a temporary time gap filler, and it's not a long-term projection, because there's no way we can fee our way out of where we're about to head very, very quickly. And so, like, I'm trying to, like, take it all in and make this make sense, but it's still, I understand we have to do something.
You know, for years, we also took $1 million out of your fund.
I was just going to say, so
Yeah.
it's fee-based. This is just a sustaining operation. This money doesn't transfer to the general fund. This stays within the Bureau of Sewers. So for years, past administrations, and I'm not saying it's wrong, have used money from the Bureau of Sewers to help offset the type of deficit in the general fund. But over the this was the first year, in my memory, that I don't believe we did the transfer out.
Correct.
No, we're not transferring money out, and
Okay,
the
so-
enterprise funds are supposed to be
Self-sustaining.
self-sustaining.
So the money that would go back in the general fund, you know, we now use to repair equipment, buy supplies. So it is helping. But we have aging infrastructure. We have a responsibility, to your point, to protect the investment. You know, the people on fixed incomes, you know, have worked so hard and paid their dues. So we can't just let it crumble around us. And when we start having issues where we can no longer replace parts because they're not made anymore, we're working with equipment, you know, some of the tanks are 20, 30, 50 years old. You know, we've had some things manufactured by local machinists
Last real
just to try to
major
keep them
thing that
running.
you had done,
What's that?
I said, last major thing you had done down there was when Mayor Savakia was here.
We have had
Huge
other capital projects, but,
Right.
you know, you're talking about 1920 to date, you know, with the age
Oh, I
of
know what
that.
you're
Yeah.
saying.
So
You're
you
doing
look
a
at
hell of a
pictures of
job
the
down there, don't get me
100-year
wrong.
plan, right? and
All
what
I'm
it
looking
looks like.
for is other ways to get you the money.
Yeah, totally understand. And I would be on board with anything that makes sense. My job is to keep the facility running, stay in compliance with, you know, DEP and EPA regulations on several fronts. And just to provide service to the 200,000 people that utilize that system on a daily basis. We are just as important as the distribution of water. We have, you know, a responsibility to a clean lake, which translates into a better quality of life for our citizens and visitors that come here. And we're proud of the work that we do at the Bureau of Sewers, and all we're asking is to maintain that.
And remember, whatever you come up with, whatever we come up with, has to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about 1 year here, we're talking about 35-year bonds and 35? 25-year bonds. And we're talking about a capital plan that spans the next 5 years.
I'll warn Jason, since he's here, I'm way more likely to be on Ed's side for refuse than I am sewer. Because the tax exempt organizations pay their sewer bill and refuse is just residents. And they're enterprise funds, so they operate the same way. I'd like to find some ways to screw around with that refuse increase. But can I ask some questions about the $41 million in needed future capital investments? Is there anything particularly exciting with those investments that, I always have some environmental concerns. I see certain years there's some pretty substantial investment. Is there anything on the docket that I'll be excited about?
Well, most people don't find wastewater treatment exciting.
You know what a nerd I am.
Right. So what we did was, we were at $60 million. So if you look at, there's a handout here.
Yeah.
If you guys want to grab this. Yeah.
It was a separate one, yeah.
You're good.
You good? So if you look at the first column, estimated project cost is $64.19 million. And then you move over to the right and you look at 34.5. So what we did, the sewer authority and the city, is we sat down with their engineers, prioritized. Certainly, we would love to do $65 million worth of projects, but that would be a huge chunk for anybody, to digest as far as a rate increase. So we prioritized. We, as a cliche, kicked some cans down the road as we have in the past, looked at the projects and said, what do we need to do now so that we can keep the operation running and keep it within compliance? So we broke that down into $34 million worth of bond and then a $6.64 million use of the bond redemption improvement fund. Are there projects on here that are any type of like a new flavor of ice cream? No, these are all replacing kind. These are fixing aging infrastructure, equipment and parts of the plant that we can no longer service because they're past their useful lifespan. There's no parts on the shelves. Nobody makes them anymore. Manufacturers have gone out of business, and they need to be replaced. There's no way to Band-Aid this anymore.
And I agree with you there. I have no problem with that. Like I just said, but I have trouble with the numbers. Last year we sat here and we couldn't cut a penny because the budget was so tight. And then we ended up with a $5.9 million. In the good? Yeah,
like
it was
I said,
$5 million sitting there.
We had.
And we could have helped the
here.
poor. We could have helped a lot of people. We don't know what we'll have this year. I know you do a heck of a job with the books, but again, we don't find out the dollar until after we pass the budget.
Well, and it's nothing I do. It's when we have a good winter and we don't spend as much in overtime and we don't have the flows at the wastewater treatment plant that we thought we would because we didn't have that much rain. I mean, we've been lucky over the last couple of years.
I know, each year I think we save $500,000 from our snowplow.
Sure. I hope it stays that way.
But you have to look at
For us.
what
You have
about
to-
what about the next year?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So
plan. Because we
we
could
have
get
the
one
wet
back.
season on record next year. So any type of savings that you may have, any type of overages in the accounts may be completely exhausted with just one, catastrophic year. So I think we do the best we can to predict and forecast what we're looking at from year to year. These are just numbers that, on a piece of paper look kind of daunting, but over the long haul, they're going to pay dividends and they will stretch out for decades.
Is there any of this technology that projected just with like some of the, who knows where legislation is now, honestly, with just that may become obsolete or that we're going to try to go more towards like a green source or anything like that we start to see?
Are you talking about?
Just so the capital projects and the things
that are forecasted?
Yeah.
No, these are all just infrastructure improvements, piping systems, rehabilitation of tanks. There's nothing here right now where we're looking at maybe like, are you talking like solar?
Yeah.
Certainly we have in the past, we've done some improvements to try to get ahead of that. Unfortunately, then your electric rates go up by 100%. So your return on investment is nullified in one fell swoop. But certainly the Bureau of Sewers and the Erie Sewer Authority are committed, to looking at anything that's going to save the ratepayers money and help improve our process.
Does any of this, It's been 2 years since I've been your liaison. I haven't been keeping up with your work that much. But does any of this go into like the regulatory environment, or environmental and regulatory stuff that we need to keep up with?
Yeah, so what we do is capacity. So, that's our job. We take in the wastewater, we hold it, we treat it, we release it. So when we look at, primary treatment improvements, so, okay, it might not be a new technology. So say we don't move away from chlorination, we go to ultraviolet for disinfection. That's not what we're doing here. It's taking care of the infrastructure that helps us treat the water that comes into the plant. So yes, to answer your question, capacity is compliance. We have to be able to maintain that facility to hold the water that we bring in and treat it appropriately before we release it. So there's, I wish I could tell you that, we were going to be forging into the forefront of some new technology, but,
It's okay. I don't want to pay for
No. What's that?
that. It's okay. I don't want to pay for that.
Well, no. I mean, there's always that thought process for that, but right now, we want to, fix what we have and keep the plant operational.
Yeah.
And do it with, the greatest bit of, fiduciary responsibility we possibly can.
Basil, are you able to go to a COG meeting and talk to the municipalities that use our system for increases on their part as well?
Well, we have long-standing agreements with the tributary communities. There is nothing that says that they have to sit down and open up those agreements. Certainly, we could approach them, but they may not have an appetite. And you can't just open up one portion of an agreement and say, hey, we want you to pay more, for flow and transportation and treatment. Because they may want to talk about, well, let's talk about what it would look like if we didn't have to pay X amount of percentage towards capital improvements. Follow what I'm saying? So it's we could have that conversation, but I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that it probably wouldn't go very far. But it takes more than just us having a conversation.
There's adjustment factors.
Mr. Senator, the solicitor for the Erie Sewer Authority might be able to speak more eloquently about that than I. Tim, would you like to speak to that?
Do you know how long the agreement?
They existed for perpetuity.
It seems like with my 21 years, I've been fighting that for a long time.
Some of these agreements go back to 1970s.
These are long-standing agreements that you've entered into over a long period of time. And as you'll see from I don't know what, not page, but where they have the $8.2 million amount of money that the outlying municipalities do contribute toward these improvements. So there is a sharing based on the formula that's set forth, which is based on flow. So it's the amount of flow that they provide to the treatment plant that we have to service. And that's how the proportionate share of their contribution toward these capital projects is calculated. So they are paying their proportionate share based on those agreements. And so I think you should be aware of that. So if we do have the new bond issue to take care of these capital projects, they will continue to pay their proportionate share of those funds, which is why it's important to kind of go down this path. Because then the municipalities are paying their proportionate share, which is important for your overall revenue to the city. And just on behalf of the Erie Sewer Authority, the authority asked me to appear just in case you had any questions in regard to their projects. This is not a new process. This process has been going on for a long period of time. This is we evaluate the treatment plant and the interceptor sewers, which is what we're responsible for, just the treatment plant and the interceptor sewers, not the outlying sewer lines throughout the city. We evaluate those on a yearly basis. We did a 5-year plan back in 2018. We came to you in 2018, and we did a bond issue in 2018. We're finalizing. All those projects are basically completed and being wrapped up. The money has been spent, and we're near the end of spending that money. We do have that same engineer evaluating the treatment plant and our facilities on a yearly basis. We update that capital improvement plan. And then we ask the engineer to prioritize those projects. What is the most important that needs to be done from a regulatory position, because we are regulated both by DEP and EPA. We've had inspections by both entities over the last years to look at our facility and make sure it's up to date. And actually, the incinerator is one of those pieces of equipment that they're looking at us very carefully as to what we do in regard to that piece of equipment. And we're trying to keep it up to date. And we've had some issues with the incinerator. So that's why those things are prioritized on the list. And the authority, when we first got the capital improvement plan from the engineer, it was 60 million. And we went back to them and said, that's too much. You know, you have to reprioritize. Tell us what's the most urgent things that need to be done, and then also space it out over the 5 years. Because we can't do all these projects in the first year, we want to space them out over 5 years, just like we just did from 2018. So anyway, just a few thoughts on behalf of the authority. If you have any questions in regard to the capital improvement plan, we provided, I think Basil has provided a detailed presentation that was provided to the authority in March of this year, which goes through and does summarize each project. However, we also would offer an opportunity that Basil could take you through, and authority members could take you through the plan itself and show you exactly what needs to be done and what has to be done and why we're doing it. So we'll give you that opportunity to come to the plant and take a look. We also obviously have to still meet with the outlying municipalities and review the entire plan with them and make sure they're on board. But you're the first step. And so we just wanted to make sure you're aware. That's all I have, but sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
If whatever the municipalities are paying for the flow, is there a percentage of maintenance built into that?
Transportation and treatment, they pay for both.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Transportation and treatment, yes, they pay for both. So they pay for the cost to treat what they send to the facility, and they also pay a portion of the maintenance costs of our collection system. That's built into the agreement.
Okay.
Yes, so they pay for both parts of the system. And it is worth saying that they do pay their fair share. What they send to us and their fair share of capital costs.
That's what they're paying already. As a So based off of if we increase, more likely their amounts will go up as well a little bit?
The more it costs us to operate this system, based on their percentage of contribution to the plant, their costs go up. So if they do more to their system to prevent I&I and less than that, then of course their costs will go down to be sending less to the system. So, I mean, it's just a matter of how you manage it.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions about the presentation?
No, the presentation was done very well.
Yeah, you guys did great. Thank you so much.
Sure. I'm not against this. I just want the administration to look at other ways to
Finding the
bring
money.
money in, because it's become too much of a burden on the folks on a fixed income. It really is.
I understand.
I guess I'm the old guy. I wish I don't want to give everybody else's number out to them, but they call me,
No, you're all right.
and I feel for them.
Okay, Mario.
Pardon, sir.
Okay, Mario, right.
Melvin, are you picking on me?
No, my
Any
man.
more questions for Phil and Rocky?
No? Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Rocky.
Bureau of Sewers, 2025 preliminary budget, that's $28,087,000. I think everybody knows it's divided into two components, one being sewer treatment and the other being sewer collection, sewer maintenance. So page 75 is our sewer treatment budget preliminary for 2025. That coming in at $22,859,000. Go through the line items on page 75 there. I think she's caught up there. Okay. We have a small increase in 4024. This is contractual, toll allowance and uniform benefits, a $4,000 increase from last year to $24,000. You can see the October 30th year-to-dates there, and we were slightly over budget as of October 30th. We also have, I believe all these other ones here, budgetary is the same as 2024. Next one down there, 4054 rentals. We have you could see there we had a $600 budget for 2024. We're asking for a $2,000 budget for 2025. I believe a lot of this was associated with anticipated heater rentals for the lab. Is that correct, Basil?
Correct.
Okay. We have an increase in 4056.
Do you want to explain heater rentals in the lab? Do we not have heat in it?
Well, we do. It's waste heat, so for the incineration building. But it's a critical area and it has to be environmentally controlled. So what we did last year is we actually rented some heaters to help facilitate keeping the lab operation and the cost for Williamsburg. But as part of, I think this future project, we're looking at separating that system to keep the admin building and find some system at some point.
Good job. 4056, we have a $100,000 increase. 2024 was budgeted at $400,000, and then 2025 we have $500,000 budget number there. You can see at the end of October we were at 361. I believe now we're pushing right up to the budget number. Looking into next year, I know there are some centrifuges at the lab that are getting quite aged, and we're anticipating having to have repairs done on those. And so, and we didn't have those this year, but next year, so we did increase that one line item. I don't know is there any questions more on the centrifuges or any other anticipations there?
I have a question about 4047.
Oh,
So I remember the discussion that came around that last year that we budgeted for a 20% increase in utilities because of being so shocked about the inflation that happened in 2022. So we budgeted a much higher number. I'm seeing that this year that dramatic budget increase was not needed, that things were very stable this year, that they weren't any higher, although maybe heat, light, power, maybe I don't understand, and that these numbers are going to jump up in the last 2 months. But it seems that we have this budgeted much higher than need be.
As of right now, we're at $2,105,000, and we've got 2 months to go.
Okay.
And just the electric bill alone per month is over $100,000.
Okay.
So we're probably going to hit our budget.
What's that?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you're giving me a $300,000 difference than what I'm looking at on the computer right now, so that's makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Okay, 57 account, 59, I believe these other ones. That 4059 account, Lisa, did we have anything to add on that one? That's the central service cost, correct? So we have,
The central service cost, of course, goes up because all of the costs that go into it increase every year due to inflation. Is, the security goes up every year, I think.
Actually, the security contract is going out for bid this year.
Right.
So I would expect an increase there,
Mm-hmm.
along with several other contracts that will be going out over years end as well.
Correct.
You gotta talk about 4059?
Other services and charges?
yeah,
Because, yeah, the amounts are way different from where we are year to date to what we budgeted and what we're trying to budget for 2025. So I would like to know what.
The $227,000 difference?
Is this something that gets billed like at the end of the year? Like, so like we're just gonna get about $1 million in bills between now and the end of the closeout? That's, I think, the question. 4059?
4059.
Well, central service fees have not been taken
Oh,
out of
yeah,
it.
right.
There's still
Yeah.
$812,000 that has yet to be transferred out of 4059,
That usually gets done towards the end.
towards the end of the year.
Okay.
So you might as well call that $1 million plus right now, because that transfer will happen.
Okay.
And these numbers are,
Those are the things you need to show us.
and I believe that number has been transferred now.
It is
Yeah.
set to be, it is set, I
Yeah.
believe it was encumbered to be transferred out.
November 1st.
November
Okay.
1st.
The day after.
The day after we updated
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
any other questions on the 771 expenditures?
I do see that, do we have a bigger or an accurate number for 4041 on where we are for the professional services?
The professional services are need-based.
Right.
So I will have contracts with various consultants, air quality, other engineering firms. And as we use those services, then they bill appropriately. So it wouldn't be uncommon that we might come in a little bit less. We could have issues that we need, more of their expertise. So
I just see in years past how much lower it was, and then in 2024 we gave 150,000, and then for 2024 we're under 80,000. So I was just
a lot of that's regulatory driven. So we lean a little bit more on some of the experts in those fields, especially for air quality. And then with upcoming PFAS regulations that are coming down the pike,
And Ref
we
Telus,
need to stay ahead of that.
Ref Telus is in there too, correct?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Ref Telus was also in there. We last November. We retained them.
And then the cell phone charges of the communication,
I'm sorry.
the 4045.
Okay.
Budgeted 19,000, spent about 5,000, and asking for 19,000 again.
There's a grant associated
Yes.
project.
So, yeah, there was a stamp grant. Some people in council may remember that. But there was a large component of that was for communication. That was for phones and tablets. And so as of the time this budget book was printed, those were not ordered yet. They were still being specified, but that order is going to be placed before the end of the year, probably before the end of November. And that was the lion's share of that, and that was a 50-50 program with the state.
So we'll have that expense again next year, though?
The
Phone, Verizon part of it.
for the service part of it will be recurring. But not the physical devices were a one-time purchase.
there's just a number of spots on this budget where you, in 2022 and 2023, didn't spend that much, got budgeted for a much larger amount last year, but then also seemed to be very frugal and stayed under that budget, but then you're asking for it again. So I'm just trying to, I mean, it's been 3 examples now that seem to have that tendency.
Well, 2 of them have expenses coming in that are going to bring it right up to the budget, though, so.
And if I could
And-
speak to prior years, what you're seeing there as far as communication and cell phones, a lot of that is to do with our machine-to-machine. We have a telemetry system that we utilize for flow monitoring. So a portion of that goes to, you know, what we do in the collection system and to pay those bills. But to Lisa's point, was it budgeted this year in anticipation of the GIS project being finalized, but it just didn't happen?
Hasn't happened yet.
Right. So I think it was budgeted for '24 on the pretense that it was going to be completed, but was not. So
We wouldn't be
Well,
good
we-
council people if we're not asking the questions, guys. That's just
you
what
know, there's no,
we're not trying
don't
to
feel
get
bad
put-
about asking the question.
Anything else on that? We want to go over to page 77 into 78. You can see here that our FTE count remains 69.5 between the 2 years. No change there. Council's rate, I can move on to 773.
Everything seems pretty normal with all those numbers. There's one specific raise that seems to really be jumping up.
What's that?
Which one's that?
There's one that jumps up from 59 to 72. Everything else seems to be just little 2% raises.
Field supervisor.
There's a, yeah, field supervisor. That's still a Teamster though.
I'm just going to check that one.
Trying to draw a straight line across.
Same, that's what
It appears to be a Teamster.
Is,
Field supervisor?
are any of your field supervisors in their first 3 years?
No,
Because we've got
There's no Teamster position. It is a field super. That must be.
it has field supervisor as a title, but then under the next column, it has union as a Teamster, which field supervisors are typically not. So.
Would you
I'm
just
not-
check that?
That
It seems
yeah,
like there's
check that
two
one.
different reasons why there might be a typo there.
Yeah.
Between the, was that about a 20% jump in salary
That
and
has to be
it going,
a
I
misprint.
believe that's a misprint.
misprint.
okay. I'd like clarification when you get a chance to verify that.
Have it there.
Yeah.
And also, I want to say thank you, Jason, for using the book. I understand we get printed handouts, but sometimes that is just so confusing. So I appreciate you actually using the main big book for us
Thank
to
you.
keep along. Figured I'd give you the thank you personally.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay. I'll move on then to our sewer maintenance, which is code 773. That's going to begin on page 79 of your book, and I guess conclude on page 80. And this budget is $5,228,000. Again, if we go down through the line items there on page 79, I believe the only one that changed is we added in 4043. This was a line item that did not appear in prior years, but our sewer maintenance, sewer collection division really is in need of education and training, and for some reason that line item was not there in past budgets, but this would be for them to attend seminars and training. We have, I believe, 2 management in that office, plus all of our TV crew, one-call training. There's a lot of different things I believe that we need education for in that office, so we've added that line item in 4043. And I believe that was the only increase we have.
Is the lack of maintenance and repairs this year just a lucky year? Or is that another bill that's gonna be coming out here shortly?
4056
Oh,
there.
4056?
Yeah.
I will tell you that since this happened, I believe we had a pretty major project. I think I talked to council before about this up at the zoo.
Yeah.
We had a sewer line rupture. I don't believe that's reflected in there. So that was that might have been our most expensive
Yeah,
project.
that was about $110,000 just for that repair.
Still a good year.
But yeah, luck would be a good one.
Yeah.
Good. Happy to hear that.
So
In 4043, you have 5,000. You think that's enough?
I believe it is.
education?
Right.
Yeah. I think we're good.
So
with that.
I think it's
most
good. I think
most of it, what, the training gonna be local?
We
You
tried
talking about
to.
traveling?
Yeah.
We would send that maybe a handful of guys, like I say, we did send the superintendent and supervisor down for trenching school. I think that, we absorbed that out of 771. It was important, we want to make a move in that direction and start tackling some of these things ourselves. So we wouldn't send everybody in mass, but there are certain types of training that can be done virtually, but those still come at a cost,
Right.
maybe $100 per participant, things of that nature. So I figure, we start out with 5,000, see how it goes, and as, we get to be, more proficient, if more training is needed, we'll definitely come back to council to look to up that in future years.
Okay.
But I think it's a good starting point.
Is one of these 771 or 773 one of the ones that's reimbursable to the tributaries?
Both are.
Both are, okay. So it doesn't matter, no shuffling
Yeah,
around,
there's
playing around
There's
that.
certain line items that are moved, and then a percentage of that goes out, and it's all reimbursable based on the amount of time spent repairing the sanitary system, so.
Okay.
Costs are spread equally amongst all contributing municipalities.
All right. Good.
Did we get the SIR camera?
We did. We did.
Missing something?
And then you got 4059 and 4069 to go down.
4078, yeah.
Quite a bit.
4059.
4059.
It's 20,000 down, right?
Where do you get the money from?
On 771?
Yeah.
Oh,
773, sorry.
I'm sorry, make sure.
The risk is going to go down because we've changed the way we're allocating the health insurance back. Oh, no, that's risk, I'm sorry. That's just based on our risk projection.
Used to have
Yeah.
some decrease.
Yeah, I'd have to
Risk
look at what
management
happened
has
this
small
year to let you
decrease.
know what's different.
Any other questions from council on that page? Then we go over to, if, Melissa, you put up page 80 there. No surprises here, it's 18.4. FTE stays the same. The .4 being our sustainability coordinator is budgeted 40% out of here. And that's the end of the budget pages.
Field supervisor's going down.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Somebody that
Oh,
was in a new
wage-
hire? or-
Wage question.
Yeah, sorry.
Field supervisor and sewer crew,
Dropped down.
they both went down.
Have you had staffing changes?
Is it just new hire and new tiers? Okay. That's a
I don't
big, that's a
think,
big
I don't
drop.
think we'd have the same field supervisor if they were taking a $9,000 cut in benefit.
These are attached to specific individuals, and it depends on what person's in what job in any given year.
We'll check that one.
We'll double check it, but
I just don't want, I just, when I see salaries go up and down, I always want to know
Supervisor
why.
that came on board.
Because, you know, I hope people
So
know.
we'll have to check on that one.
You're gonna get it.
We'll check.
They're gonna see this and they're gonna.
Well, it could have been a new hire
Right.
for the tenured employee, and that might be the start of the next for the new employee.
Or tomorrow you come into an email, you're like, excuse me.
no.
Is it a new employee?
I don't believe so. We'll have to check that.
Okay, yeah.
It's a good question. Nice catch there in that one.
Every now and again.
Yeah, that was two. 177,
Yeah.
177.
Good, too.
Two field supervisor spots.
Well, yeah,
But I know they're in two different
yeah, two different.
One was an increase and one was a decrease. So
Yeah.
we'll have to.
Yeah, we'll take
check
a
on
look.
it.
You can just email us, let us know, you know.
Maybe somebody retired.
Well, that's what we were thinking, it might be a new hire, some of the tenured employee, but I can't, off the top of my head, think of anybody. It's
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone on council has any additional questions. You did great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're
For
easy
the good
to
of the
follow
order,
around.
Teresa Stankwitz's dad being laid out at Ruger's on Avenue, starting tomorrow, I think, 4 to 7. That's Jimmy Winarski's.
Oh, you knew it. Oh, kept on track. Alrighty, I think that concludes the second study session for the 2024 year. Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us. I know if anyone on council has any additional questions, they will be reaching out. I'm pretty sure of it. And I look forward to the study session on the 21st with the police, planning, and neighborhood resources, but we have a city council meeting tomorrow, so please be, yes, we are busy this week, so please be ready for our council meeting tomorrow night. And that
Beer at 6?
yes, for the caucus, and then the meeting starts at 6:30.